You will marry Chike in 2 days, Adna's father said. His voice was final, as unyielding as the cracked earth during the dry season. Adana's heart plummeted. Chike. The poor farmer's son. The man who lived in a mud house and wore the same faded shirt every market day. She had hoped, prayed even, that her fate would be different. She was beautiful, with skin like smooth cocoa and eyes that sparkled like the morning sun on the river. She had dreamed of a love story, not a transaction sealed in desperation. Her father, Okeke, a proud but struggling man, had debts hanging over his head like a vulture waiting to strike. The village elders had suggested Chike as a suitable husband, and Chike, ever humble and hardworking, had agreed. No one had asked Adana what she wanted. Tears slid down her cheeks as she stared at her mother, seeking comfort, but Mama only turned away, her silence a heavy confirmation that this was final. What Adana didn't know was that Chike was not who he seemed. Beneath his simple attire and quiet demeanor lay a secret so grand that it could change her life forever. But secrets had a way of revealing themselves at the right time. And for Adana, the storm was just beginning. The morning sun rose lazily over the village, casting golden hues over the narrow footpaths and the small, mud brick houses. Adana sat on a low wooden stool outside her home, her heart heavy with the weight of an unwanted future. The scent of roasting corn filled the air, mingling with the distant chatter of women heading to the stream. Normally, she would have joined them, laughing and teasing as they fetched water, but today, there was no joy in her heart. Her best friend, Ifeoma, crouched beside her, eyes wide with disbelief. Adana, you can't just accept this. You're only 18. You deserve love, not, Ifeoma gestured wildly, her frustration evident. Not a forced marriage to a man you barely know. Adana sighed, tracing circles in the dusty ground with her finger. What choice do I have? My father says it is for the good of the family. He believes Chike will take care of me. But Chike is poor. Ifeoma whispered fiercely. How will he take care of you when he barely has enough to feed himself? Adana swallowed hard. That was the part that scared her the most. Life in their village was already hard, but to be married to a man who had nothing. How would she survive? Little did she know, Chike was no ordinary farmer. Beneath the ragged clothes and quiet demeanor was a man hiding a fortune, a secret he had vowed to keep until the right time. While the village saw him as a poor nobody, he was, in truth, the son of a wealthy businessman who had left behind a vast inheritance. As Adana sat there, dreading her fate, Chike stood not far away, watching her from the shadows. His heart ached for her pain, but he knew that soon, everything would change. Would she ever forgive him for keeping the truth from her? The day arrived too soon. Adana stood before the small gathering of villagers, dressed in a faded red wrapper her mother had once worn on her own wedding day. It had been carefully ironed, but no amount of smoothing could erase the years of wear. Around her, the women sang softly, their voices carrying the bittersweet melody of tradition. To them, this was a joyous occasion, but to Adana, it felt like a burial, her burial. Chike stood waiting under the large mango tree where the ceremony was to take place. He was dressed simply in a brown tunic and trousers, his feet bare against the warm earth. His face was unreadable, but his eyes held a quiet intensity as they followed Adana's every step. She barely looked at him as she was led forward, her hands trembling in her mother's grasp. The village elder, a wrinkled man with a voice as rough as the bark of an iroko tree, began the marriage rites. Words were spoken, kola knots broken, and prayers muttered over their joined hands. Adana's heart remained heavy. She had dreamed of love, of a man who would sweep her off her feet with promises of adventure and passion. Instead, she was bound to a man she barely knew, a man who owned nothing but a few goats and a patch of land. Chike, however, watched her closely. He saw the sadness in her eyes, the stiffness in her posture. He knew she did not want this marriage. And yet, he also knew that one day, she would see him for who he truly was. As the final blessing was given, and the villagers cheered, Jack reached for her hand. It was cold in his warm palm, her fingers limp. He leaned in slightly and whispered, "I know you don't want this, but give me a chance." Adana said nothing. She had no choice but to follow him home. Adana followed Jack in silence, her feet dragging against the dusty path that led to his home. The village women trailed behind, singing and clapping, their voices filled with a joy that she did not share. Her mother had given her one final hug before whispering, "Make the best of it, my daughter. A woman's fate is to endure." Endure. Was that all her life would be? A series of sacrifices